A few players have been putting up some solid point production for the New Jersey Devils. And also, let's talk about this upcoming matchup against the Carolina Hurricanes. It's never an easy battle when the Devils have to go up against the Canes. We have a lot to break down in today's episode of Locked On Devils. Buckle up, everybody.
You're Locked On Devils, your daily podcast on the New Jersey Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hi, this is Bryce Salvador, and you're Locked On Devils with Trey Matthews.
Scores! Oh, Stevens stepped up, nailed it. Brodor's got the puck. What a shot. The Devils win the Stanley Cup.
Alrighty now, what is up, New Jersey? Welcome back to the Locked On Devils podcast here at the Locked On Network. I'm your host, college hockey play announcer, Devils writer of Pucks Pitchforks, and also part-time credentialed media member, Trey Matthews. In the previous episode, I talked about the excitement I had for the Devils calling up Nolan Foote and Shane Bowers, basically giving Sheldon Keefe some more options when it comes to filling out his lineup. Because I will admit, I was a little pessimistic when it came to the Devils' fourth line. It consists of Justin Dowling, Curtis McDermott, and Tomas Tatar. McDermott only played in 5 minutes in the previous game against the Lightning. Tatar has been a little underwhelming. And with all due respect to Dowling, I think he's doing the best he can possibly do, but he can't be an everyday guy. So getting Bowers and Foote added to the lineup, I would love to see one of those players be given a shot to play on the Devils' fourth line or wherever Sheldon decides to place him. Once again, giving yourself some more options, especially since you're missing some key depth assets in Curtis Lazar and Nathan Bastian. However, while the previous episode highlighted some players that need to elevate their game if they want to receive more praise, I want to give credit where credit is due because the Devils have a few players that have been racking up a lot of points the last few games and some other players that have been contributing in more ways than one. So I want to praise them. That's what we're going to talk about in the first segment. Then in the second segment, I will play a soundbite from Sheldon Keefe at a recent Devils practice in which he talked about what it's going to take for his team to come out victorious against the Hurricanes. I think it's safe to say that the Hurricanes are one of the few teams in the NHL that have the Devils number. It's been an uphill battle every time these two teams play one another. It's always physical, and New Jersey seems to be on the short end of the stick. Then in the third and final segment, the Devils have a lot of former Hurricanes players on their roster, including Bratt, Pesce, who unfortunately did not play in the first matchup between these two teams due to him recovering from injury, but he's ready to go. I want to play that soundbite because Bratt Pesce has been doing something quite intriguing with New Jersey, and it's for a good reason. But I'm going to save that for the third and final segment. All right. Who's been hot for New Jersey? The first player is Dougie Hamilton. Dougie Hamilton is a turnover machine. Let's just get that out the way. And Brendan Dillon being paired alongside him, I think it's made Dillon a little worse when it comes to defensive numbers. I saw a card that was released on social media that basically highlighted Dillon's defensive ability. And it's been saying that Dillon hasn't really made that great of an impact for New Jersey when it comes to defense. I will come to Dillon's defense. Once again, Hamilton is a turnover machine, but the main thing that Dillon needs to do for New Jersey is be aggressive and physical, and he's been doing that. And he comes to the defense for some of his teammates, and I love that from Dillon. That is his main priority, and there's a lot of other defensive-minded defensemen that can pick up the slack when Dougie Hamilton and Brendan Dillon aren't really cutting it from a defensive standpoint. Once again, I am coming to the defense of Brendan Dillon, just highlighting that Dougie Hamilton doesn't really focus that much on defense. But once again, I'm trying to praise Dougie because he has 15 points in 21 games played, and he has 6 points in his last 5 games. That is Dougie Hamilton's bread and butter. He can rack up the points on the Devils' blue line, and given the fact that Luke Hughes hasn't really been generating that many points, Kovacevic, he's solid, but he's not going to do it consistently. Jonas Siegenthaler, Brendan Dillon, Brett Pesce, they're not really going to rack up the points either. A good majority of the scoring when it comes to Devils blue liners comes off the stick of Dougie Hamilton because he has a phenomenal clapper, and that was dearly missed last season, especially on the power play. A lot of people said that the Devils would be a better team if Dougie Hamilton wasn't on the roster. And last season proved that theory to be false because the Devils got worse when it came to power play numbers and other tangibles. Hamilton is an important piece on this Devils roster. Next player I want to highlight is Nico Hischier, the captain. 20 points, 10 goals, 10 assists in 21 games played. But I'm not going to focus on Nico Hischier's offense, even though it's been really good. It's his defense I'm really impressed with because Nico has been doing a good job. Him and his line mates have been doing a pretty decent job when it comes to shutting down some of the main players on the opposition. And I think a good example of that came at the hands of the Vancouver Canucks game because similar to what Bill Spalding said on air, the Vancouver Canucks, they have a decent amount of big time players. Obviously, you got Jack and Luke's older brother, Quinn, Miller, Garland, Pedersen, Besser, you name it. But the MSG broadcast didn't need to mention any of those players because the Devils collectively did a good job shutting down the Canucks. And Nico Hischier's line, that's just one of many examples of Nico leading the way in terms of being a great two-way player. So I got to give Nico credit in that sort of aspect. The next player is Jack Hughes. 22 points in 21 games played, 8 goals, 14 assists, and he has 7 points in his last 5 games. This is the Jack Hughes that I saw last season during the month of October. The Jack Hughes that if he stayed healthy, he would have been in the running for the Hart Trophy. I'm glad that Jack is finally coming back. I said you got to be a little patient with him because he only appeared in one preseason game. He's coming back from shoulder surgery. Give him some time. The next player, and this is probably the biggest one when it comes to forwards, is Jesper Bratt. 24 points in 21 games, 8 goals, 16 assists. He had a hat trick in one of the matchups against the Panthers, 6 points in his last 5 games. Jesper Bratt is the best player in the NHL. I wouldn't go that far, but he's one of the best players on the Devils roster. Arguably, he was the Devils' best player last season. He appeared in his first All-Star game. Jesper Bratt is amazing. Underrated, but amazing. And I wanted to give him credit in that sort of aspect. The goaltenders have been excellent too. Jacob Markstrom, 14 games played. He has a record of 8-5-1, a goals against average of 2.58, and a .907 save percentage. Jake Allen, 7 games played, has a record of 4-2-1, 2.3 goals against average, .916 save percentage. If you need any reassurance, goaltending, not an issue for New Jersey. Those two have been phenomenal in between the pipes, and I think they've been everything you could ask for, and some of the losses aren't really on their shoulders, if I'm being completely honest. And I know some people might point to Eric Holla and say, well, Trey, his scoring has gone down a little bit. Paul Cotter's scoring has gone down a little bit. Remember, that's not their job. Their job is to be aggressive, do the dirty work, and create possession for their teammates. Their scoring is a bonus, similar to Stefan Nason. Their job is to just play hard-nosed, physical hockey. And if they're doing that, I have no complaints. The same can be said for Andre Palat. When I spoke to Jesper Bratt, he had nothing but good things to say about Andre in the fact that he's creating possession for both Jack and Jesper. So I'm not going to say like they're not doing well just because their scoring is down a little bit. No, you got to look at it from a different perspective, and you got to know what their roles are for this team. All right, so those are some players that have been catching my eye the last few games for New Jersey, and Jack Hughes had a phenomenal showing in Florida. Same with Jesper Bratt. I've been rather impressed with this Devils team when it comes to offensive execution. I think they're heading in the right direction. All right, before we continue and we play a soundbite from Sheldon Keefe, let me tell you guys about Prize Picks. I've actually used Prize Picks quite frequently. I still use it to this very day, especially during the basketball season. You can now win 100 times your money on Prize Picks with as little as 4 correct picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get in on the sports action in over 30 states, including California, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Prize Picks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, Prize Picks keeps your lineup live. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. Okay, Sheldon Keefe recently spoke at a Devils practice about where his team is at and how they can come out victorious against the Carolina Hurricanes. Take a listen.
Their rush game, their game-breaking ability with his game, that's changed as you prepare for them as well, I would imagine, right?
Yeah, no doubt. It's just another layer, and there's many things to prepare for when you're playing against Carolina. The first thing is the pace and the competitiveness that's required. But like I said, I think they've added another element to their game, and Nate's just certainly driving it.
Notice you had to stop practice there a bit and talk to the team. What did you think of the overall practice, the effort put forth?
I thought it got better after our discussion, but it wasn't where it needed to be before that. I think it's hard. You can put a finger on a number of things. Whether it's the time off and you kind of lose your edge a little bit when that's the case, but also just having practice. I mean, yesterday and today, those are our third and fourth practices of the month. So in some sense, I think we've maybe forgotten, what we had established in terms of the level of competitiveness and the pace required in our practices that we could bring out to games. But yeah, I felt they needed a reminder, so I gave them that in the end. It got a lot better after that.
Has this team established an identity yet in your eyes?
Well, I think our effort in Florida, South Florida in particular, I think is an indication of what we're capable of and how we want to play and how we can play with anybody when we're at our best like that, and we're playing as a 5-man group in 3 zones and playing with lots of pace and competitiveness and execution. So I think there's signs of that, but are we there consistently? No. And I think elements of today's practice are a good reminder that we've got a long way to go.
Here's a not so fun fact. In the last 10 games against the Hurricanes, the Devils have a record of 2-7-1. It's safe to say that the Hurricanes have New Jersey's number, and every time I see the Hurricanes on the schedule, I do get a little bit nervous. But anyway, let's not be pessimistic. Let's be optimistic, because the Devils went against these reigning Stanley Cup champions twice in a row, and they came out victorious in both matchups. And Sheldon Keefe talked about the Florida trip in that soundbite. I'll touch on that momentarily, but the 2 things I want to highlight that Sheldon Keefe said: competitiveness and pace. That's what the Devils need to do if they want to beat the Hurricanes, because the Hurricanes certainly play with a competitive edge and great pace. And Martin Necas, remember over the summer that Frank Saravelli was saying that the Devils could use their first-round pick to package it in a deal to get Necas. I said, yeah, that's not really going to happen. But anyway, digressing a little bit, Necas has been phenomenal for the Hurricanes. And don't look now, The Hurricanes are on a 3-game winning streak. They've been playing really well all season long, but I want to go back to the Florida trip just because Sheldon Keefe brought it up during his media availability. I would say that the Florida trip was a success. Yes, the ending wasn't really all that good, getting shut out by Andre Vasilevsky and just having no offensive firepower. Seems like the Devils got shut down at the blue line frequently. They couldn't generate any sort of momentum. But make no mistake, going up against the Panthers, another physical team, another team that has solidified themselves as a really good unit in the NHL. They won the Stanley Cup just a few months ago. At the time, they were first in the Atlantic Division. They were riding a 7-game winning streak. And I was worried that once the Panthers got Sam Bennett and Sergei Bobrovsky back into their lineup, I thought the Devils would be in for a much tougher battle, but the second game was better than the first one. I know Sheldon Keefe is saying like there's a lot of positive takeaways, but if the Lightning game was any indicator, the team's just not ready. And he is right, which is the Devils have not hit their peak. And similar to what Stefan Nason told me, they don't want to hit their peak until the end of the season going into the playoffs. That's what they want to do. I think the Devils are in a decent spot, but don't look now. The Metro is getting tight once again. The Hurricanes are first with 28 points on a 3-game winning streak. The Capitals, biggest surprise, in my opinion. I know Ovechkin is out with injury, but 27 points, 3-game winning streak. Capitals have been impressive throughout the course of the season. Devils are in third with 26 points. They haven't played in 4 days, but I don't think that's a bad thing. 2 days of rest, 2 days of practice. One of the biggest issues for New Jersey is that they've played a lot of games and haven't had a lot of time to practice or rest. And Sheldon has said that throughout the course of the season, they've had to pick one or the other, but this 4-day break allowed for them to do a little bit of both. Okay, how do you come out against the Hurricanes? That's my biggest thing. Right behind the Devils are the Rangers, 25 points. They're on a 3-game winning streak. And the Islanders and Flyers are starting to slip a little bit. The Islanders have 19 points. They've dropped their last 2 games. Flyers have 18 points. They've dropped their last 2 games. Not going to really focus on the Penguins or Blue Jackets. Mike Sullivan's on the hot seat, and the Blue Jackets, respectfully, I don't really have high expectations for them. So this game against the Hurricanes, it's going to be a decent challenge for New Jersey because you're coming off of a 4-day period in which you haven't played a game. You've gotten some rest. You've gotten some practice. Can you repeat what you did in Florida in those 2 games against the Panthers where you played physical, you played aggressive, you played with great pace, and you gave the reigning Stanley Cup champions a run for their money? I would love to see that against the Hurricanes because, like I said, the Hurricanes have had the Devils' number the last few games. 2-7-1 in the previous 10 matchups for New Jersey. That's got to change because you might see the Hurricanes in the playoffs. We don't really know. So that's just my main takeaway, which is Sheldon Keefe is right. The team still has a lot of work to do, but I think they're heading in the right direction. And I like where they're at. But if they go on a 3 or 4 game losing skid, they could slip in the Metro. And similar to what happened last year, that points margin starts to increase and it gets bigger, bigger, and bigger to the point where you're in a big hole and you can't really climb out of it. We'll see what happens, but I think the Devils are in a good spot. All right. Before we play the soundbite from Bratt, Pesce, let me tell you guys about Game Time. I've actually used Game Time frequently to purchase myself some MLB and NBA tickets. Game Time Picks creation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. All-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkout. Seat views, get a good view from your seat in the app before you buy. The lowest price guaranteed or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage. Your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in ticketing industry. Right now, Game Time is having an exclusive zone deal for the NHL Winter Classic event at Wrigley Field. Go to the Game Time app to purchase tickets and get 10% off bleacher seating and 20 to 25% off on home plate area seats. You can see the action up close and personal. Download the app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL to get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? It's game time, everybody. And now, let me tell you guys about FanDuel. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And please remember to always gamble responsibly. Okay, to close out today's episode, let's play a soundbite from Bratt Pesce as he talked about his excitement heading into this matchup against his former club. Take a listen.
Perhaps you've had this one tomorrow circled on your calendar. What is that kind of like for someone? And what's sort of going through your head as you spent your whole career there and now you're going to face it?
Yeah, definitely adds a little motivation for sure. Obviously never done it before, so I think the first period might be a little weird. I got a lot of good friends on that team. But at the end of the day, it's, we need a win, and they're a good team, and they're in our division, and we need the 2 points. So, I could talk to them after.
You've been on that team for a long time, and obviously there's some personnel that's changed, but what makes them who they are that is so good and hard to compete against?
Everyone's bought in on that team. Roddy's a heck of a coach. Ton of respect for him, obviously, a good friend, and so everyone's bought in. Not many egos on that team. They play the same way. They play really hard every night, so we know what to expect. We bring our game. It's going to be a fun game, and looking forward to it.
I guess by default, Bratt Pesce is my player to look out for because Pesce did not play in the first meeting between these two teams due to the fact that he was coming off of off-season surgery and he was trying to ease his way back into the lineup. The same could be said for Luke Hughes. So you know what? Add Luke Hughes to that mix as well. Another player to look out for. And here's an interesting fact for you. Bratt Pesce. We've raved about Bratt Pesce's impact. Not just myself, but the entire Devils discourse and Sheldon Keefe. Bratt Pesce has brought a lot to this team in more ways than one. And I think everyone loves his father on X. He's a very entertaining character. He seems like the type of guy that you would love to grab a beer with. And he's very responsive. He's very plugged into the community. So I think a few Devils fans wouldn't mind having a beer with him. But anyway, digressing a little bit, Bratt Pesce has had an impact in more ways than one. But did you know he doesn't have a point this season, yet we're talking about his on-ice impact. Maybe he can register his first point of the season against his former club. We'll see what happens. I'm not trying to take anything away from Pesce. I just found that interesting that we always talk about Pesce, his impact both on the ice, off the ice, but he has not registered a single point. But he's been one of the Devils' best defensemen, and he's done great alongside Luke Hughes when it comes to shutting down the opposition. But anyway, leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. Who are some players that have caught your eye when watching the Devils? And also your thoughts heading into this matchup against the Hurricanes, a team that is tough to play against. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment down below if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on podcast streaming service, hit me up on my personal X page app at TreyMatt4 or the show's X page app at Locked On Devils. As for today's episode, that's all the time I have for you. Continue to stay safe Have a wonderful day in New Jersey. Go Devils. I'll catch you guys in the next episode. Thanks for listening once again.